Hello and welcome. We have a really good show. Sit back and relax. Today's episode is the 1/72nd scale Hasegawa Rosenbauer Panther 6x6 airport crash tender, Japanese military self-defense force. That is a mouthful. But this is a very interesting truck. It's used throughout the world. It is made in Austria and used to put out fires, obviously as a fire truck, and used in a lot of local and state and national firefighting efforts. As we start with our sprues, we have the rear compartment and side compartment. We have the front and top, the front compartment, more pieces, underside. Quite a few pieces. There are a lot of small pieces. Most of them are for the chassis and for the outside. This is what it looks like when it's built up, but we're going to be doing something a little different, of course. This is going to be a part one of hopefully a two-part series, no more than three-part series, so we will go over things a little bit more in depth. We obviously start by cleaning up the pieces as we go, sanding them down, gluing them together. I'm also going in order of the instruction sheets, starting with the chassis components. There are quite a few very small pieces. I believe it took up most of 1.5 sprues to get all these pieces conjoined. You've got 2 rear axles and a front axle all drive for your 6x6 configuration. This thing has a lot of torque, a lot of oomph to get the firemen where they need to go. But of course, being in an airport, you don't have very far to go, so you're not going to see a lot of these with too many miles. Speaking of which, while doing research for this video, I came across quite a few videos and pictures showing fire tenders all over the world used in various local and state and national firefighting forces, some military like this one, and quite a few configurations, very powerful, the people who use them. First off, I'd like to thank them for what they do. They help save lives. And they're very proud of this machine. That was the one underlying theme throughout each video, each article, was the men and women that use these. They serve with pride and honor, and they are good machines. So with that said, there are multiple different configurations you can have ordered on these. There's a lot of different type of fire options. There's a lot of build options for the body. This actually will be using 2 kits. This is what's called a kit bashing, when you use parts from different kits. Thankfully, these are very similar kits, so it doesn't require too much cutting up, but it will require a little bit of coordination as making sure which pieces go where and go forward. This obviously is going to be a custom build. When do I do anything by the book? And therefore, the second video will actually go into the painting and the modifications for this specific build. And this video will focus on the building of the chassis, the body, and then the primer for the body. So let me know in the comments what you think this build will lead to. Where do you think my twisted mind will go? Or, better yet, what would you do if this was your kit and you had anything to do with it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And with that out of the way, let's continue building. So our chassis is now put together, and so is the axles, drive axles. The suspension parts are going in right now. These are very fragile pieces. I broke Several pieces in the making of this, mistakes were made, but they weren't that hard to fix. A lot of times it was just a piece of severed in half, and it just needed to be glued back to the other half. These wheels do not turn after assembly, they glue in place, and so it's not critical that the bits and pieces of the suspension are broken and glued back together. But be mindful, be careful, and it's actually an enjoyable process. Very small, 1/72nd scale is quite tiny, but it's what this came in, so we'll go from here. And at such a small scale, most of the undercarriage is hidden by the external part of the fire truck, and so I'm not even bothering painting the chassis, to be honest with you. I'm sure you can if you really want to. The colors that are called out during this build, and what you'll probably see on your reference photos, are that they are black or dark colors with oil stains. I will probably weather oil stains underneath, as most vehicles have that detail, but it's really kind of optional at this stage, honestly. With the chassis finished building, it's now time to move on to the underside of the structural part of the truck body. This is quite straightforward. There was two pieces. That is one of the options of this kit, and it's what I salvaged from the other kit was the rear part. It glues into place and then just glues to the chassis. A lot of what I'm doing here is repairing pieces that broke off. There were about 3 or 4 pieces that failed during assembly, and so I elected to do that during final assembly of the chassis. There were also very, very tiny pieces, almost like needles, but in plastic, of the suspension components, the sway arms and such that need to be put on after you put the chassis and the undercarriage together. My build videos that are either of simpler projects or full builds that are contained within 15 or 16 minutes are generally either edited very fast to go gloss over this, or some of the parts that are problematic are edited out. And so this time I decided to leave it in to give you an idea of what's involved. And now here comes the body. This is the main tank, water tank that goes in front of the engine, but the rear half of the truck. You'll see how it comes together in a minute. Next is the control panel with the slide up doors that sit in front of the water tank. This is a very common feature on most fire trucks that you'll see in use today. Part of the kitbash is the rear engine housing. This is the very back of the truck. It sits above the chassis, and the engine and drivetrain actually start here, then going forward to a transfer case near the middle of the vehicle, which splits the power between all three axles or six wheels, giving you your 6x6 configuration. A good tip during a build like this is when you're gluing angled pieces like this is to have a spare piece of plastic, such as a sprue or some spare styrene laying around. You glue it into the angle and it forms a little brace. That way, as the glue dries, it forms a stronger bond and then also becomes part of the structure when you're done, giving it a little bit more strength. In the early 1990s, Chrysler started advertising their Dodges and Plymouths as having a cab-forward design. Well, they've got nothing on this truck. This truck is cab-forward to the extreme, and it's a very, very compelling look, hence why I got it. Which is why I ended up with two kits. I have a lot of ideas for what I'd like to do with these, but I focused on two of them. The first one being this one, a minor kit bashing. The second one, which will actually be a scratch building, so a slight conversion there. And we're going to play with the design and go from there. It's going to be a lot of fun. This poor kit is cursed with this rugged Hummer look at this very tiny scale, which makes it look very cute. So you've got this rugged, cute grille. When appropriate, it's always good to mock up your components to make sure the tolerances in between are going to be workable in case you need to make small adjustments or modifications. And it's just plain fun. Plus, at this stage, I'm going to go ahead and finish the roof. Not the ladder just yet, but I am going to glue the smaller parts that will normally be just painted over once the top is ready. And speaking of paint, it's time to prime. For the sake of time and trying to keep my videos between 15 and 25 minutes, a lot of my paint stages are done off camera. Therefore, I will show my first paint stage, which is a light coat, moderate to full coverage, which I will build up in layers between 2 and 4 coats afterwards. Sanding in between stages to make sure that imperfections don't creep in, and then applying the next coats of paint, my base coats and my top coats, as well as the gloss coats. So I will show you the first layers, but not all of them. On the next episode of That Random Model, we're going to 1985 and a very special anime. If you know what this is, leave it in the comments down below. And until next time, thank you for watching and enjoy these scenes that inspired this build.